Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. In Europe, the number of deaths from the new coronavirus has now crossed 100,000. Meanwhile, in the US, nearly 1,900 have died overnight as hundreds of Americans staged protests against the lockdowns in several cities. Globally, infection cases have exceeded 2.3 million with nearly 161,000 fatalities. More in this report.
Europe now accounts for nearly two-thirds of the coronavirus fatalities worldwide. Experts says the number of confirmed infections is likely to be a fraction of actual cases, as many countries are testing only the most critical people. Italy and Spain remain the hardest hit in Europe, with the most number of deaths in the region. Germany has reported 184 new deaths in the past 24 hours, while in Turkey, the number of confirmed cases has overtaken neighboring Iran for the first time. In Britain, the rapid swell of the outbreak has overwhelmed the national health services.
We've got to do more to get the PPE that people need to the front line. This is an extremely challenging situation. As you say, there's massive global demand for the equipment. This is a global pandemic, but we are trying to do everything we can to get the equipment that we need.
In the US and Brazil, hundreds of people have taken to the streets calling for authorities to resign over lockdown measures. But New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says data will dictate the strategy, not whims and wishes.
I think the president leaving it to the states was not just right and legal and constitutional. I think he's right that it's different in different places. Look, when we look at this state and we talk about reopening, we're going to talk about different strategies in different parts of the state because the numbers dictate the strategy, and you have different numbers in different parts of the state.
Meanwhile, in South Korea, the number of infection cases has fallen for the first time to a single digit since the outbreak peaked in February.
Pakistan has reported 514 coronavirus infections in the past 24 hours, taking the total number of cases to almost 8,000. The health ministry said 159 people have died across the country, with 16 deaths reported since yesterday. The ministry said 63% of the infections are locally transmitted. The ministry said 1,868 people have recovered, while 47 patients are in critical condition. Meanwhile, the UK has announced financial support worth £2.67 million to Pakistan in the fight against the pandemic. British High Commissioner to Pakistan, Christian Turner, said the support is aimed at seriously ill and stronger testing system. Fearing protests and rallies, the Indian forces are burying martyred freedom fighters secretly in occupied Kashmir. The valley is under a curfew and communications blackout for the last 259 days. Talking to media, Kashmiri locals said occupation forces are burying the fighters in a remote northern settlement. They said despite requests from the families, forces do not hand over the bodies and don't even allow them to attend funerals. Local rights activists Khurram Parvez condemned the behavior of Indian forces, saying it is the right of families to mourn and bury the dead. Meanwhile, Kashmiris said despite the Indian clampdown, thousands of locals take part in funerals if they receive the body. Welcome back. Canadian media says Indian intelligence agencies have used money and disinformation to sway Canada's politicians into supporting New Delhi's interests. According to a government document, this operation began in 2009 and India's Research and Analysis Wing and Intelligence Bureau were behind it. More on this report.
The operation also involved an Indian national who has been charged with espionage by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service since then. The man in question has not been named, but it has been disclosed that he is the editor-in-chief of an unnamed Indian newspaper. His wife and children are also Canadian citizens. He is accused of meeting Indian intelligence operatives 25 times over 6 years, most recently in May 2015. The accused maintains he only met the intelligence operatives in a journalistic capacity, but he didn't dispute that he had been asked to perform various functions by India's RAW and IB agencies. This included providing financial assistance and propaganda material to politicians in order to exert influence over them. One of his tasks allegedly included convincing lawmakers that funding from Canada was being sent to Pakistan to support terrorism.
US President Donald Trump has warned China of consequences if it was knowingly responsible for the novel coronavirus pandemic. In a White House briefing, President Trump said such doubts have put a question mark over US relations with China. Trump also said Washington has good relations with both North Korea and Russia, saying US would have been at war with Pyongyang if he was not the president. The president said he doesn't foresee an increase in military tension with Moscow, not so much with Beijing. He said it is yet to be seen if COVID-19 in China mistakenly got out of control or was it done deliberately.
If they were knowingly responsible, certainly. If it was a mistake is a mistake. But if they were knowingly responsible, yeah, then there should be consequences. You're talking about, potentially lives like nobody's seen since 1917.
Trump and senior aides have strongly criticized China for a lack of transparency after the coronavirus broke out in its Wuhan province. Now moving on, in Chad, 44 suspected Boko Haram militants have been found dead in their prison cells in the capital N'Djamena. The chief prosecutor says the prisoners were apparently poisoned. He said the autopsy reports of 4 victims revealed the prisoners ingested a lethal substance that led to heart failure and breathing complications. The prosecutor said the victims were among 58 suspected militants arrested during a recent operation near Lake Chad. Earlier this week, the Justice Minister said the suspects were due in court for a trial on last Thursday. The 9-day-long operation against Boko Haram killed over 1,000 suspects and 52 soldiers. Afghanistan's government says the Taliban have killed three people, including a police commander in northwestern Badghis province. The state governor's spokesperson said 6 others were wounded in the attack at a checkpoint in Makar district. The spokesperson said clashes between the two sides continued for 2 hours, but there are no reports of Taliban casualties. Earlier, National Security Council spokesperson Javed Faisal claimed that the Taliban killed 24 civilians last week. The spokesperson said 13 others, including women and children, have been wounded. He emphasized that peace requires a commitment to ending violence and protecting civilians. The Taliban have neither confirmed nor denied the allegations. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif will leave for Damascus tomorrow to hold talks with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Abbas Mousavi said Zarif will also meet his Syrian counterpart during the one-day visit. In a statement, Mousavi said Zarif and the Syrian officials will discuss mutual ties and the regional fight against terrorism. Earlier, Iran's foreign ministry said Assad had emphasized on talks between Tehran and Damascus on recent developments. The ministry said Tehran has reiterated its support for the Republic of Syria. Libya's internationally recognized government says its forces have captured 102 fighters loyal to Commander Khalifa Haftar. They also seized heavy military equipment. GNA military said it has also captured areas of Luaisha and Salahuddin south of Tripoli. In another statement, the forces said they carried out 17 airstrikes on the strategic town of Tarhuna. It said Tarhuna is a major focal point of Haftar's militias in their onslaught against Tripoli. The UN-backed government launched Operation Peace Storm on March 26th to counter Haftar's offensive. In Mali, people are voting in the final round of the legislative polls despite concerns of the coronavirus and militant threats. The elections have been repeatedly delayed as the country struggles with a militant revolt. Voters in the nation of 19 million are casting their ballots in the runoff to elect 147 members of the National Assembly. The first round on March 29 was disrupted by militant attacks and intimidation, including the kidnapping of opposition leader Soumaïla Cissé. The country has been plagued by conflict since 2012, when the rebels captured much of Mali's arid north. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro says the legislative elections this year may be pushed back due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In a radio interview, Maduro said the fight against the outbreak is a priority and it is unwise to insist on scheduled polls under these circumstances. When asked about accepting aid from Colombia, Maduro said Venezuela will welcome anything that helps the health of citizens. Venezuela has so far reported 227 cases of COVID-19 and 9 deaths from the disease. In Indonesia, 9 people have died in a landslide at an illegal gold mine in the western Sumatra province. Officials said a group of 12 people, including women, were digging for gold at an abandoned mine in South Solok. District spokesman said 3 people keeping the watch reported to local authorities when the group failed to emerge from the mine. He said the bodies of deceased have been removed from the scene. The spokesperson said the victims were local farmers digging the gold without proper equipment or protective gear. In Ukraine, after being extinguished twice, radioactive wildfires around the defunct Chernobyl nuclear plant are raging again. The Interior Ministry says over 1,800 firefighters and 300 units of equipment are working in Kiev and Zhytomyr regions. Police said a huge fire was started by arsonists in the forests around Chernobyl earlier this month. It was put out this week, but new blazes broke, fanned by heavy winds. Ukraine's health ministry says there is no new radiation risk as yet from the fires and pollution. The raging fires have pushed pollution levels in Kiev to the worst in the world. The Pentagon will extend the travel ban on service members to June the 30th due to the novel coronavirus pandemic. During a briefing, an official said the new order, which is yet to be signed, includes eased restrictions and exemptions. The official said the Defense Secretary, Mark Esper, will review the policy every 15 days. The original 60-day stop movement order was put in place last month in an attempt to curb the spread of the coronavirus among the troops. It was set to expire on May the 11th. The Pentagon remains concerned about asymptomatic cases among the nearly 3,000 U.S. troops that have tested positive so far. Health authorities in the Middle Eastern countries have reported new cases of COVID-19 and deaths from the viral infection. Details in this report.
The WHO said there has been a 51% increase in the number of reported cases in Africa over the past week. It added there has been a 60% increase in the number of reported deaths. Sudan's health ministry said 30 new cases were reported over the past 24 hours, bringing the total number to 66 with 10 deaths. Ghana's information ministry said COVID-19 statistics are at 641 with 5 new cases recorded and 8 deaths. The Nigerian president's chief of staff, Abba Kyari, died on Friday after contracting the new coronavirus. The national tally in Nigeria hits 493 as national testing strategy rolled out in the country. In Cameroon, there have been 922 cases and 21 deaths, but many fear the real number of confirmed cases is more than 1,000. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention said it planned to distribute 1 million COVID-19 test kits in the continent. The organization said kits will be distributed in the next week to help African countries address the shortfall.
The effects of the coronavirus crisis are threatening traditional food supply chains in Mexico. The production of nopal or prickly pear cactus is dwindling in the country. More in this report.
Nopal is a staple of Mexican food, used in everything from tacos to salads or as a side dish to accompany meat. Grown on hillsides of extinct volcanoes in southern Mexico City, farmers are finding it necessary to grind up their harvest to use as mulch.
Yes,
the coronavirus emergency has affected sales, and many people have abandoned their nopal fields, and others are cutting them up. And the few that have them are selling this week since the price recovered a bit.
The main cause of the decline in production is the lack of customers coming to the vegetable market in Milpa Alta, a borough of Mexico City.
In my case, I stopped coming for about 20 days because of the coronavirus. But we need things, so we had to come again and sell. and there's little movement, meaning there are not many customers because people in the city are not coming out to buy.
Mexico's economy has been battered by the coronavirus outbreak, and many are struggling to make ends meet as the country heads into its harshest recession in living memory. Health officials have reported more than 7,400 cases of novel coronavirus and 650 deaths so far.
Some of the biggest names in music have joined forces to celebrate healthcare workers in a globally televised concert. Lady Gaga, Paul McCartney and Billie Eilish were among more than 100 artists who performed songs from their living rooms. The Rolling Stones managed to play together from 4 separate locations. The 8-hour show also featured real-life stories from those on the front line to fight COVID-19. Lady Gaga, who curated the lineup, called the event a love letter to the world. Titled One World Together at Home, the concert was organized by the Global Citizen Movement and the World Health Organization. Proceeds from the concert will go to the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund for the WHO.
We can dance, doing it in pole. We can dance, everybody's watching their hands. We can dance.
The UAE and other Gulf markets have started the week on a higher note, led by a jump in Dubai bourse and Abu Dhabi index. The positive sentiments on the regional bourses were on the back of gains in the US stocks on Friday. Dubai stocks led the way with 3.5% over gains made by property stocks. Abu Dhabi was up by more than 2.5%, led by Ishraq Investment, Abu Dhabi Shipbuilding and First Abu Dhabi Bank. Saudi Arabia's Tadawul, the largest bourse in the Gulf region, was also up 0.5% after opening. Bursa Kuwait also made a strong start to the week, rising almost 1.5%. Qatar Stock Exchange too gained over 1%, while Bahrain index was nearly unchanged. South African Airways has planned to lay off its entire staff of nearly 5,000 after failing to persuade the government for financial help. The move has threatened the existence of 86-year-old national carrier. In a proposal, the state-owned airline has offered severance deals to all staff from the end of this month. The proposal terminates the services of employees by mutual agreement from 30th of April. The company needs to sell and dispose of its assets to make payments of the severance packages. The Department of the Public Enterprises said no agreements have been reached over potential mass cutbacks as talks with creditors and unions continue. In a statement, the department said the discussions for the best possible outcome for the airline's employees are underway. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates,